About 2 weeks ago, a new couple moved in across the street. Julius and Bill. Not surprised the house sold, to be honest. It was a hell of a fixer-upper. Guess they really liked the place. It's an old farmhouse. It was built in 1712 or something. It's better now since they got all the garbage out of the front yard, but the curb appeal is still seriously lacking. Not long after they moved in, I invited them over for dinner. I figured they wanted to know their new neighbors was, well, neighborly. Plus, I was curious. I'll come out and say it. I'd never really talked to guys like them before. Maybe I'm old school, but in my day, I wasn't exposed to those kinds of folks, you know? Even though I know it's supposed to be a different world nowadays, I still have a hard time believing two men would make the choice. I mean, what man looks at another man and says, hey, let's be florists? But it turns out that they were just normal businessmen who happened to be into flowers. We talk about a new world. Aside from that, they're regular guys, good drinkers too. And we enjoyed lasagna, a few bottles of wine, and I got around to asking about the home repairs and how they were going. Now, I was initially surprised they were choosing to live there while the work went on. Made a point to ask about it. Well, Bill wanted to rent a place while we fix it up, Julius explained. But I convinced them that we shouldn't. It's too expensive. That money could be put into repairs. Yeah, now we got extra money for rabies shots, Bill retorted, glaring at his partner. Rabies? I asked. What gives? Julius rolled his eyes. I don't think you can get rabies from mice, sweetie. Black plague, then. Okay, sure, yeah, we'll get black plague, Julius said, his voice oozing with sarcasm. Won't that be adorable? You and me in the hospital together. He wrapped his arms around his husband and made kissing noises at him. I winced. I hate mice. So, what are you guys gonna do? I asked. I'm sure you can get an exterminator to come out for pretty cheap. Yeah, Bill acknowledged, but none of them will come to our house. Julius nodded. I was puzzled. What do you mean? Just what it sounds like, Julius answered, pouring a fourth glass of wine. As soon as they hear our address, they just apologize and they can't work with us. And you know, Will, I've been meaning to ask one of the neighbors about that. Do you know who lived there before us? The landlord wasn't very forthcoming. I shook my head. I mean, it's been empty for close to 20 years. But it was just an old guy named Philip who owned the house. I say older. I guess I'm his age now, but I never said a word to him. And Nadia talked to him a few times, before she passed. But only when his dog was using our lawn as a toilet, you know? I take it that he died there. Oh no, he moved in with his daughter. At least, that's what Chuck, guy from down the street, told me. Never gave him much thought. Julius belched. Good one, Bill and I remarked, and I grinned. I like these guys. So, we've just put down traps, Julius said. We've caught hundreds of them. Don't you two get sick of dealing with mouse droppings all over the place? Thankfully, it's mostly limited to the basement. There'll be a mouse or two on the main floor every so often, but never upstairs. I saw one upstairs, Bill said. Okay, Julius acquiesced. Aside from that one upstairs and a couple downstairs, it's the basement that's a real problem. And it is a real problem, Bill announced. We'll be in bed at night and hear them from 2 floors away. Chewing, scurrying, squeaking. It's creepy, man. Julius's foot touched mine in the middle of the night while we were listening, and I screamed. So, that's what that was, I laughed, lying. Bill rolled his eyes. Yeah. But this just goes back to what Jules and I were fighting about before we came here. Oh, trouble in paradise, huh? I asked, bemused. Julius looked annoyed. Are we doing this now? Here? Seriously? No, we're not doing anything. I just want Will's opinion. Is that okay? Whatever, man. Go for it. Julius reached for the wine. I passed it over, meeting his eyes and giving him a sympathetic nod. So, Will, get this. 2 nights ago, I put down 10 mousetraps. I know it was 10. I still have the box that says mousetraps 10. I went down to the basement to check the traps the next day. Every one of them had been triggered. They all had dead mice in them, except there were only 8. 2 of the traps were missing. Missing? Yeah, gone. I looked all around the basement, couldn't find... You know, the manufacturers probably just put 8 in a 10-pack, right? Julius interrupted. Okay, yeah, except that's not what happened, and I told you that. I know there were 10. Julius looked around me. I could tell he was hoping I'd defend him, but I was starting to get itchy. I always hated mice. So what'd you do? I asked Bill. Well, I went to the store, I got another 10-pack. And yes, Jules, it was a 10-pack, and I put all of them down in the basement again. This was the last night, and this morning, there were only 6 down there. 6, I repeated. Yeah, 6. And Jules, I didn't even tell you this part because I know you're squeamish, but the 6 mice that had been trapped were all mangled. They were all messed up. Like, even worse than what the trap does. All their guts are like busted out and stuff. Jules turned green and excused himself. Bill and I listened to him puking up in the bathroom across the hall for a minute or two. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, he's fine. Just the sight of blood's enough to turn his stomach. Plus, he holds his liquor like a 16-year-old twink." I laughed. I hadn't had a Twinkie in years. "So, Will, what do you think? My money's on rats. They're too big to get stopped by the traps, and the mice who get caught are easy meals. Explains everything." I was about to answer when Jules stumbled out of the bathroom, and there was puke on his shirt. He looked unwell. "Sorry, Will, but I gotta call it a night. I might have overdone it." "No problem, buddy. Thanks for coming. It was great getting to know you. We'll do this again." Jules nodded and swayed drunkenly. "Bill, you coming?" "You go ahead," Bill instructed. "I need to talk about mouse stuff with Will for another few minutes, if you're okay with him." "Fine by me," I answered. "You good to get home, Jules?" "Totally fine," Jules said, wobbling to the door and opening it. "It's only a few 100 feet." "Sleep it off," I called after him. "You'll be good as new in the morning." He laughed. Bill sighed. "Sorry about that. Not a very good first impression." I laughed. "Don't worry about it. I've been in this situation more than once, and Nadia always had to bail me out." I walked over to the liquor cabinet and offered Bill some scotch. "Just one. I got work tomorrow. Got a big arrangement for some corporate place downtown." I poured our drinks and gave a suggestion. "So you think it's rats?" And I'm inclined to agree with you. I know the store's got rat traps, but considering the infestation it sounds like you're dealing with, maybe you gotta bite the bullet and go with poison. "Yeah. Neither of us wants to resort to that, but it might be the only choice. Put down another 10 traps before we got here, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be the same thing as last time." We drank in silence. I could tell Bill was thinking it over. "It's just that we want to adopt once the house is done. Jules and I are worried about getting the kid, getting in contact with poison." "That's legit. But exterminator would be using poison, right? I mean, that is, if one was actually willing to come out to your house." "True," Bill agreed. "But that brings me back to our talk from earlier. Why is that? Every exterminator seems to know about our house. That Philip guy who lived there before us do something to tick all of them off? I wish I knew. It's definitely weird. If you want, I can give a call in the morning, see if I can get one of them to come here, then walk them over to your house." Bill exclaimed. "That's an idea. Hell yeah, do it." We clinked glasses. Bill stood up to leave. "Thanks for the night, Will. We gotta call you over next, once the house is in better shape." "It was my pleasure," I replied. "You guys are welcome here whenever. I'm retired, so, I got the time." I opened the door for Bill and stuck out my hand. He grasped it, and we shook. He headed down the steps. I turned back into the house. Before I could shut the door, I heard a shriek. I whirled around. Bill looked shocked. "That was Julius. Let's go," I shouted. We took off, running towards their house. We burst in the door, and Bill started shouting his partner's name. Julius was still screaming, but his voice was much quieter, weaker. "It's coming from the basement," Bill told me, and we rushed down the stairs. "Oh my God," I whispered, seeing my neighbor's condition. Julius was lying on the dirt floor. His left leg was severed mid-shin. Blood flowed from the ragged wound and muddied the ground below him. My war training kicked in. "We need to get pressure on that now," I announced, and pulled the belt from his pants. "Hold him and call 911. Bill knelt beside his partner and cradled his head in his lap. "It's okay, honey. You're gonna be okay." He dialed 911 and was told an ambulance would be there shortly. I tied my belt around Julius's amputated shin and was heartened when the blood flow slowed to a trickle. "This is gonna hurt, Jules, but I need to keep this elevated." Jules winced. He was pale and sickly looking. The alcohol in his system wasn't doing him any favors. "What happened?" Bill asked. "Who did this to you?" I simply wanted to empty the traps before you got home, so you didn't have to do it. I felt that." "It's okay, Jules. It's okay, but what happened? I heard something move on the other side of the basement along the boxes and crates. Ancient furniture. I assumed that it once belonged to Philip. We got more than mice, Billy, Julius muttered. I looked around the area, around Jules. There were only 4 traps. Of the 3 of them that had mice in them, 2 had been mutilated. Looked like they'd been chewed on. More than mice. Jules, what is it? What hurt you? I think it's still down here, Julius whispered. On the other side of the room. Distant sirens were getting closer. Help would be here soon. Something across the basement fell over. Bill and I jerked our heads in its direction. An antique end table was lying on its side. It had been upright when I'd last looked. Still here, Julius mumbled. He was losing consciousness. The damn ambulance needed to get here fast. I heard the emergency vehicles racing up the gravel driveway, doors opening, closing, men rushing into the house. We're down here, Bill yelled. Something else fell, a chair. And when I saw it, I gasped. Bill? I shouted and pointed to the far side of the basement. As EMTs rushed down the stairs, Bill and I were looking the other way. It was the size of a fat Rottweiler, only twice as long and covered in dark gray fur. Mousetraps were stuck to its legs. Its 10 legs. A thick, hairless tail whipped around, stirring up dust. 3 cone-shaped heads, each home to 6 eyes, glared at us, and the EMTs hadn't seen it yet. Guys, whispered Bill. Guys. He pointed towards the thing. The EMTs had encircled us and were working on Julius, oblivious to me and Bill in our preoccupation. None of them paid us any attention. Guys! Bill screamed, and the supervising EMT finally looked where he was pointing. What the... Before he could get his words out, the thing rushed towards us. It was like a hairy centipede traversing the long basement, way faster than any man could run. One by one, the EMTs noticed and screamed. They held their hands up, ready to be attacked. But the thing rushed by all of us and bounded up the stairs, the attached mousetraps banging against the wood as it went. We heard its footsteps thudding against the living room towards the front door. Stunned, the EMTs looked at each other, then at us. Then they went back to stabilizing Julius. They hoisted him onto the gurney and made their way up the stairs with Bill in tow. I followed them blankly to the driveway, where I said my goodbyes and wished them luck. The cops are en route, an EMT told me before they left. Stay here. I obeyed. The police arrived 15 minutes later. They asked me a bunch of questions, took my statement, and left. For some reason, none of them seemed surprised. The next morning, I called the hospital to get an update on Julius. He was okay. Lots of blood loss, but he'd make it. Bill called me later that day to tell me the same thing. I hung up. I couldn't get the events of the previous night out of my mind. I hadn't slept, couldn't eat. All I could think about was that thing and its 18 eyes staring through me as it flashed across the basement. I remember the conversation I'd had with Bill the night before, and on a whim I picked up the phone and had the operator connect me with an exterminator. Sorry, we don't service calls in our neighborhood. That was the gist of the 5 or 6 calls I made. No explanation was given, just a version of that line on a dial tone. The 6th exterminator stayed a little longer, maybe just another 40 seconds, but he said one more thing. And that one thing made all the difference. Sorry, Mr. Thomas, we don't send our men to that part of town. He sounded old. Much older than the other exterminators I spoke to. Wait, I demanded, hoping I could stop him before he hung up. Wait, just tell me why. Please, my neighbor is hurt and nobody knows what it was. I saw it. We all did. There was a pause on the other side of the line. I was afraid he'd hung up. Hello? I asked. There was a long, long sigh. Mr. Thomas, as long as that thing Philip Bagman found all those years ago was waiting for him to come home, he'll never have one of us try to come take food out of its mouth. I don't know what would happen to anyone stupid enough to do that. Goodbye. Hold on, I insisted. How did you know about... But it was too late. He'd hung up. Hey there kids, it's me, Mrcreepypasta, and I wanted to tell you thank you for watching or listening to tonight's video or tonight's episode of the podcast. Please subscribe on YouTube if you'd like to get more videos from me, or subscribe on Spotify if you'd like to get more podcasts from me. Or if you just like listening to me in general, you can always check out audible.com. On audible.com, I've got a bunch of different audiobooks that I've worked with for these authors that you may see across the channel. Some of my personal favorites I've worked on are the ones from Vincent Van Akava, as well as the ones from Gas Station Jack or Jack Townsend. You can find all those audiobooks from Vincent, as well as Tales from the Gas Station, Volume 1 and Volume 2, available on audible.com. And now, for patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta, which you can always find in a link in the description, I want to give you all a very big thanks. There's many of you down there in the descriptions who I give big thanks to, and everybody also at this tier, like Dr. Strawberry, Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Ken, Lando Higuchi, Brianna Van Tine-Janzen, Chompski, TheRedOakShieldVirus, Sindee Barney, G Weevil 3, Diana Kraus, Stephen VanHuss, Tristain Pelton, Nico, kaeo, TheGingerBroz, Dante Rowe, Raphael Rodriguez, Lastbladesong, Don Meulmeester, Eliminator 86, Nebsky, SteampunkSinner, Optimistic Avocado, Kaleb Dougal, Daniel Poulsen, Finley, and Sky Harbor. You guys are the MVPs, and you guys keep the channel running, and I honestly cannot thank you enough for all that you do. That's all for tonight, guys. Sweet dreams.